Can you hear me all right? Make sure this is on.
I don't think it's on.
I saw a green light.
You see it,
Well,
green?
actually, this is like hooking up a red link. What do I do? The light ain't blinking.
Don't worry about that, because I got a mic
I
right
can
here.
hear it? Okay, perfect. I'll put it on in case it starts. So, we ready? My name is Dan Garrity. I'm with Resideo. I'm not going over the whole Honeywell Resideo thing because that's way too old, but Paul had asked me to come in, and Lutz and a few other guys, to talk zoning. So I gave you a bunch of different things, but the main thing we're gonna cover is the zoning, but I wanna just touch on two simple things before we get started. And one of the guys said it best. When a guy comes to the counter and asks for the cheapest thermostat you have, I'm asking you don't run to the shelf anymore and pick a T701 Pro one. We have a T3, and we've repriced this thing. It's about $5 less than your T701. We have increased the font size. We've made it easier. It is in the same sub-base as all the rest of our thermostats are. But I think right now it's $3-4 less your sale price than a T701. 5-year warranty, easy to read, easy to navigate. If you need heat only, when you put heat only in the contractor side of things, the cooling button goes away. If you're on a hydronic system, the fan button goes away, so super easy. And if they ever want to upgrade, they snap this off, they put on a T6 Wi-Fi or T10, and away they go. So that's what this info is. SKUs on it, you guys are getting, you guys stock them. They've been out 5-6 years. Guys that have really gone to them really like them. The other thing I've given out is some T10 plus information. I'm not going through that because I hit on that pretty heavy last fall. So I'm just reminding you it's out. We're selling the living hell out of them. Just be aware of it. And then this is a mini thermostat catalog with virtually the top % of what we sell is in this mini catalog, and it'll point you in the right direction. So if a guy's asking for too heat, too cool, or something that's can control a ventilator or whatever, this is a quick snapshot of what we have. And if you want any of these, text me, email me, whatever you want. Take a picture of it with your phone and say, hey, send me a few of these, and they come in like 25 packs, so I'll get you whatever you need.
Yeah, we should get some for the counter for sure.
Those?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got a pack at least in the car.
Okay.
If not, I'll mail them to you. What we're gonna cover today is zoning. So zoning is all in this selection guide. I'm not gonna go through this, I'm gonna go through the presentation, but virtually everything I talked about is in this brochure. And again, if you want zoning material like this, I can send you that. I can tell you, Johnstone Corporate is making a big push with zoning this year, and there will be a lot of zoning in your monthly flyers and things like that. And a lot of wireless products going to be pushed this year, so just be aware of that. So zoning, we're going to just cover basics today, and this is super you have questions, you stop me. You know, we don't have to wait for questions or what have you. So the reason and the basics of zoning are 99% of the houses, well, I'd say probably 95% of the houses out there, they're multi-level. We've got one thermostat in the hallway or in the living room, and all the rest of the rooms are way out of whack as far as temperature goes. Why is that? Because if I have one thermostat controlling the whole entire house, I have I've got differentiation because of windows or insulation or levels or what have you. So ideally we want to kind of break that up a little bit. So how do we do that? Number one, we have to do it with ductwork, but we do have retrofit. But we have to get another thermostat somewhere in the house or a different level. So instead of one centralized, and I apologize if it's super basic, but I know there's some guys that just started in the industry. If I'm too basic, let me know. When you are laying out zoning, let's not make really small zones in a house. If we make small zones in the home, we're gonna have noise, we're gonna have some bad equipment, things can happen, so be smart about it. I know you guys probably aren't laying out a lot of the zoning, but just for principle, if I got 2 floors, that really should be 2 zones. Maybe the master bedroom would be a 3rd zone, but master bedroom generally doesn't need a whole lot of CFM, so you're gonna have to be pretty smart about how you do the ductwork into there. So what I mean by that is, maybe I got a home office in the basement and 1, daytime maybe 2, and then nighttime 3. Try to make it as big as possible, yet make sense to the homeowner and yourself. So lay it out, be smart about it. Don't give me a master bedroom that is 400 square feet and that's 1 zone. It works for crap, and all you're gonna get is problems and complaints. Questions on that? It's really pretty simple. But if you follow some simple rules that'll kind of go through, you won't have problems. And the biggest problem with zoning is noise. Noise, noise, noise. And the homeowner, the #1 complaint is noise all the time. So if you do it right, you'll never have noise. The other rule of thumb, you're not gonna have this really in any brochure. If you take the total CFM, so let's say I've got a 5-ton system, I've got 2,000 CFM, and that is what I would need for the entire house, but I only need for the master suite, maybe 600 CFM. Make sure the smallest zone is at least 60% of the total CFM. So what's 60% of 2,000? 600, 1,200. I need to make sure I've got enough ductwork. If the other zones close, I can jam 1,200 CFM down that duct. If I don't, you need to use a bypass damper, and I'll get into bypass dampers. But you can get away from bypass dampers if you do at least 60% of your load CFM-wise can dump into 1 small zone. That'll keep you out of a lot of trouble.
So you're generating a 3-zone,
Yep.
you're not gonna be dumping 60% into a master bedroom unless you've got a massive master bedroom.
That's why I'm saying we need bypasses 99% of the time. Or some really big ductwork, right? And then you're gonna run wild, like you're saying. So you're better off, it's a fine line between a bypass and duct design.
Well, so if I heard this right, you're saying 60% into the smallest zone, right?
Yep, so let's say I had a 3-zone.
Would
Yep.
it be like in the biggest? I mean, why is it that way?
No, because if the 2 biggest zones shut,
Yeah.
I still have a ton of CFM from that system going into the
I
smallest
see what
zone.
you're saying. Okay.
Follow me?
It's not taking as much, so you have.
Correct. I'm not too worried if I got a bigger zone, because if the small zone and a medium zone shut, more than likely I'm gonna be, if I'm at least 60%
I
of
mean,
it.
that small zone is not pushing that.
Bingo. The worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenarios, and I don't have a duculator, but let's say I have an 8x20, and that can only take, let's say 1,000 CFM, and I apologize, I don't have a duculator, but I'm gonna have noise like you wouldn't believe, and the curtains are gonna stand up halfway
Oh,
through
yeah.
the room.
I see what you're saying.
Yep, yep. So what we do is, and we'll get into the componentry of air, but we have a panel, we've got dampers, and we have thermostats. That's really the basics. So if you go to that selection guide, you don't need to now if you don't want to, but it's gonna do step by step what you need to design a whole system, or not design so much, but select equipment. So just a little bit out of what the panel is, goes in a different selection 1, I think, is panels, but doesn't really matter. The main thing is you can use any 24-volt stat. Now in the last class we talked about OEM and your communicating thermostats. I cannot talk to the communicating product, so it has to be a 24-volt system, okay? So any thermostat really will work. A zone panel, and we'll get more into that. Zone dampers, and in most cases you're gonna have a bypass, and I'll explain all these as we go along. But those are really the 4 components you need to make a zoning system. We make quite a few different panels. And the way you read our panels is pretty easy. Number 1, you won't sell this one at all. So if you want to take your brochure and cross out the HC 221, that is a heat pump only, and we're not really a heat pump market, so you're never going to run into that. We make that for builders in the south. The way you read our nomenclature is pretty simple. H for Honeywell, Z for zoning, or home if you want to, because we're not Honeywell anymore. 3 is how many zones I can do. So 3 zone, 4 zone. And then stages of heat, that's why it's red, stages of cooling. So if I got a single stage product with single stage AC, and I got 2 zones, I don't make a 2-zone panel, I would just have a 3rd zone and you would sell them that panel. That easy. If I got a 2-stage piece of equipment or a heat pump, we're not gonna get into heat pump yet. 3-stage heat, or 2-stage heat, 2-stage cool, but 3-zone, so 3-zone, 2 heat, 2 cool, and I would use that panel. This panel was the #1 panel sold in the Wisconsin market for the last 20 years. But with heat pumps and dual fuel starting to take off, we only make 1 dual fuel product. It's in the selection guide. I don't care if it's a 2-zone all the way to 4-zone, you need to use this if you're doing dual fuel. So the 432 is the only one you can do dual fuel. And again, if it's less than this many zones, you're cool. If it's more than that, we gotta talk.
Does everyone know what dual fuel is? Can you
Okay,
just talk briefly
yep,
about that?
absolutely. So what dual fuel is normally you go into basic houses that have been built over the last 15, 20 years, you got a furnace, right? And you got an air conditioner, and you all probably have that type of system, but we're coming out with super efficient heat pumps, and I'm assuming everyone knows what a heat pump is. It's just an air conditioner that runs backwards. So if you ever go out in the middle of summer and you put your hand over your air conditioner, what's it blowing? Hot air? Because you're taking all the hot air out of your house, right? Well, when you do a heat pump, there's a reversing valve and we run that thing in reverse. And we take that heat that comes off the air conditioner and we put it in above the furnace with the A coil. And all we do is change the refrigeration cycle and make it backwards. That's what a heat pump is. Well, in Wisconsin, that heat pump can heat down, well, some are starting to, but they don't do a great job of it. And they generally can heat down to 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 10 below, and whatever the manufacturer tells you they can do. So we have to match that up instead of with electric strip, because if we had electric heater in the plenum, that electric meter just gonna spin. So we back that up in Wisconsin with a furnace. So I've got a furnace, I got an air conditioner all summer. In the middle of fall, I switch that thing heat pump instead of air conditioner to make heat. And we use the furnace to blow the heat until it gets to 10 degrees or 20 degrees or what have you, and then I go to gas furnace. Takes a bunch of relays and a bunch of complicated wiring if you're gonna do it on your own. But we have a panel that does it for you, so you don't have to worry about it, and that's basically what dual fuel is.
So it cuts the need for your furnace, I mean, kind of.
Yep, it kills your heat pump
Yeah.
at whatever temperature you tell my thermostat to kill it at. So let's say 30 degrees, and then your furnace runs instead. If you're above 30 degrees, you're gonna use that heat pump because it actually financially makes more sense to do that. But at a certain temperature, it doesn't make sense to do that anymore, and we wanna switch over to gas.
Keeping your usage down.
Yep, exactly. We want optimal and efficiency. We actually have added I don't know if it's in that brochure or not, but this is just an expand panel. So if you saw on my first slide, I can go up to 4 zones. If you get something that you need to go to over 4 zones, then we have it's called an add a zone, and I can go all the way up to 32 zones. So generally, you're not gonna do that residentially, and we're not really made for commercial. Honestly, if it's over a 5-ton system, unfortunately, you gotta go to another brand. or talk to me and we'll get through that, but. Questions on that? So I can go anywhere from 2 to 32 zones. The big thing is, call me when you run into anything other than, well, call me for anything, but if it's basic, let me know. The other thing with our products, so we talked about 2-stage product. You guys probably sell a majority of 2-stage furnaces or better, right? We're hardly ever selling any single-stage product. And that basically, what's that?
Not accurate for Milwaukee market.
Okay, so your entry
What are we,
level.
50-50? Maybe even more? More single stage than 2-stage?
Probably close 50-50.
Probably 50.
And you guys probably do, you know, multifamily and that type of thing, so
Correct.
that's where you're gonna find the people that don't give a shit, they just want heat. But I guess my point is, if you have 2-stage equipment, we all know that most of the time it's gonna run on low stage, and if I have an air conditioner that's multi-stage, I need a low stage speed for the furnace. And then when there's a call for second stage, my furnace has to ramp up and I have another stage of lower. All of that's done through the panel and it's compatible with any variable speed product. That's the main thing to know. So questions on that? If it's single stage, we're fine. If it's 2-stage, you gotta just select a 2-stage panel. If you went back on my nomenclature, a 322 is our most used panel. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it on 2-stage equipment. If you sold that to the guy, and there's probably only about a $20 difference, and he had a single-stage piece of equipment, no problem. He just spent 20, 30 bucks more than what he should have, but most distributors are selling at 322 because the guy gets out there and he's got what he needs. The other thing, if you notice in our brochure, we make a kit and then we make just a standard panel. So my example would be an HZ 432. You're gonna see one model that's a K, that's for kit, and one model that doesn't have the K at the end. The only difference is in new construction, you don't have these extra pieces. So I need something to power my transformer needs to power that panel. So if it's new construction, you're gonna use the K or the kit. If it's change out or changing out some other brand or what have you, then you use the non-kit. It's that easy. It's nothing complicated whatsoever.
Well, so also in the replacement market, if they're adding zoning to, they would need the kit.
Yep, basically. It doesn't hurt to sell the kit. I can tell you if you bought a transformer off your shelf, you're probably 30 bucks. If you buy the transformer in the kit and they don't use it, they just got a transformer for about 15. So it doesn't hurt selling the kit. They're gonna get an extra transformer for a hell of a lot less money than a normal price. They just throw it on their truck and lose it a few months later. So. We don't want them to see that, so we put all kinds of protection in our wiring. So you shouldn't see that. I don't even know why we do that, but we do a lot of circuit breakers and protection built into this. So you guys sell Nest? Most guys do. You know Nest is a power stealing thermostat a lot of times if you don't have a comment on it, or don't you guys know what that means?
Why don't you tell them what that means?
Okay, so, and I'm not beating up Nest because we made one too, we pulled it off the shelf. So when you do a Wi-Fi thermostat, and we'll get into Wi-Fi versus some other things, but Wi-Fi is the rage, right? And I think we're up to about 61% of the thermostats shipped into Wisconsin are now Wi-Fi. A Wi-Fi thermostat needs a C-wire, a common wire. So most houses, I got 2 for heat and 2 for cool run through the wall. They ran it through the wall 60 years ago or 25 years ago, and I need a 5th wire to power my thermostat. That's a problem, right? Because a lot of times they stapled the thermostat wire to a stud when they built, and now you go to pull a new one and you ain't getting her through. So there's a couple ways to fix that. One is an add-a-wire. We'll do a thermostat class at a different time, but the add-a-wire's a must on any truck. Or Nest made one, we made one, and what they're called is power stealing. And what they do is I can still have Wi-Fi and I have an internal little battery inside that Nest, and then what we used to use, we called it the Lyric. The Lyric went in the garbage because it was a horrible thermostat. We don't make it anymore. But what that does is when there's a call for heat or cool, I'm internally charging that thermostat battery. So I'm always charging it. The problem is if you have a heat only or cool only, half the year that battery's not getting charged. So you come out of whatever season you're in and you come back to like an airplane hangar. I've done one recently. They had Nest thermostats and they didn't know why the hell it wouldn't work. Well, it only had heating. They didn't have cooling. So half the year I'm charging that internal battery. The other half of the year it was going dead. And then I come out of summer to heat that thing back up again and that Nest thermostat's black. It ain't going anywhere. Regardless, so what I like to say is you virtually can use any thermostat in the whole entire industry, whether it's Pro One, Ecobee, ours, whoever, just no power stealing thermostats. And that right now, the only one I'm aware of is the Nest. Wade Rogers, that Sensi, do you sell that? Is that power stealing or not?
It used to be, I don't know, they made an updated model, I'm not sure if they changed it or not.
There's a couple, but be safe with ours. I'm cool with the Ecobee. I think Pro One makes it good. Don't use anything else. Bottom line. The other problem is, and I get this call all the time, and I think I'm giving this to your other guys, and I can get this to whoever. I would, if you've got a shelf with some zone panels or something on it, I would take this page and I would laminate it, because I get this call at least once a week, maybe twice a week. And it's not in the selection guide. But when I go to power, because everything in the zoning system is powered off the board, I can only power so many dampers per board because of the amp draw. If the amp draw is too high, your zone dampers aren't going to open. So it doesn't mean our zone damper's junk. It doesn't mean anything other than, number one, the duct isn't square and it can't open. Or number two, there's not enough power to open the damper. So it's critical, because when you buy the kit, you get a 70-40 VA transformer. That's what comes in our kits. If I've got 4 zones, so the HC 432, but I'm trying to do maybe 3 or 4 zone dampers on one zone, and I go above 11 dampers per panel, it ain't gonna open and you're gonna have a pissed off customer. So this is super, super important. I also make some retrofit dampers, and we'll get into retrofit in a minute. Retrofit dampers use a little different motor, so I can put a lot more dampers on that system. Is that confusing or is that clear?
I think it's about as clear as it can be.
Okay.
At this point.
It'll clear itself up as I go
Yeah,
forward.
okay.
But this slide right here is the most important slide you'll see today.
Can you, before we move
Yeah,
on, can
for
you
sure.
just talk about why zoning is important?
Yeah, so, how many people have been in a house and it's colder than hell in the basement? Every one of us, right? How do we make that happen so it isn't? New construction, it's fairly easy. But other than putting a thermostat down in the basement and running the thermostat with another one, you would just be doing the same thing, because I have to stop airflow some way to direct it in a different position. So imagine a ranch house. Downstairs, I want one temperature, upstairs, I want another. And if I don't put thermostats in each level and ductwork accordingly, so you guys all know, you got, in a normal house, you got a pair of pants coming off the furnace and one goes right and one goes left, but they're all tied together, right? And you got one thermostat upstairs, the basement's always cold, or your heat all drops to the basement if you have open stairwell or whatever. So what heating guys do is they put two sets of ductwork in the basement, one for the basement, one upstairs, and then we put our dampers in, and you'll see some damper examples in a second. So the basement calls, upstairs shuts, and all the furnace takes care of just the basement. Or I got upstairs and I gotta satisfy, and I don't really care because my basement's probably 6 degrees, set 6 degrees cooler than upstairs. I have an upstairs call, I shut the basement zone off or ductwork off, and I put all of my heat upstairs. That's the ultimate in comfort, and it's normally done during new construction. We can do retrofit, and this is your biggest opportunity because they're obviously not building near as many houses as what they're retrofitting nowadays, right? And what a retrofit is you've got your ductwork, and if you go down your basement, you got 6-inch rungs all the way off your ductwork, and you know, you're doing your basement a little bit and upstairs a little bit. You can actually take each duct, so let's say in a typical ranch house, probably got 8 to 10 upstairs and 6 to 8 down, and you just cut a hole in them, you slide our damper in there, and then you tie those all together. So you tie up all the upstairs ones together, all the downstairs ones together, and you bring that back to the panel. So when my thermostat in the basement calls, I get all 6 open for the basement. I close everything upstairs, I get satisfied, I close everything, and then upstairs calls, downstairs shut, and then I'm just trying to deflect the air or distribute it in the right direction. Clear? And you can do that. Is your new construction still going down here? Or is
Oh,
it,
we do
okay.
a lot of multifamily.
Okay.
I mean, multi.
Single family.
Not single, we don't do a ton of single family.
Okay, so generally guys are doing this during new construction, but there is a huge opportunity to do it after the fact. If you got a walkout basement, it's even more of a necessity. That whole wall that's exposed, you know, it's one thing to be in a basement that's all concrete. You've got quite a bit of insulation value there. If it's exposed basement and they're not zoning, they're gonna zone, or they're gonna have a cold basement, one or the other. Clear? This is kind of a duplicate. The way you read our models, we've gone through that. When we do dual fuel, we talked about that heat pump with the furnace. The 432 is the only product that can do that. Make sure I get this call every frickin' month. They're getting the wrong panel on dual fuel, and dual fuel is the thing that's here to stay. You gotta be selling them the 432. Now that we have that kind of in your head, we're gonna make your head spin a little bit. So, what don't we have when we do retrofit? We don't have a wire for the thermostat to the other zones, right? Because it's all finished ceilings and the basements are done, and the homeowner's saying, there's no way you're cutting into my drywall, right? But we still can get to the mechanical room. So you put the retrofit dampers in. How do you get a thermostat to that upstairs zone, or maybe to the master bedroom? We have a few ways to do it, and this is where, I wouldn't say it gets complicated, but I get this call a lot. So, Resideo Honeywell, we have a product called RedLink. What RedLink is, it's a wireless signal, and it's patented for us, and all it is back in the day, you used to have the portable phones in your house before cell phones, and you could go to the end of the driveway and you thought you were really cool. But it was all wireless. That was was a 900 megahertz signal. We use that plus tons of security because of the lifestyles we live in today with people trying to hack into your stuff. So we can do that all wirelessly nowadays, and our panels can accept a wireless adapter. So the reason the adapter is separate is because not everyone's gonna need it. So why would I put another $40 into a panel if I don't really need it? So new construction, you don't need the wireless adapter. Change out, you're going to need to, although with cost of labor and wire, I can almost argue this would work better in new construction, but that's an argument between me and the contractor, not you guys. So the wireless adapter, basically 4 wires into the panel, and then I can talk to all the way up to 4 thermostats wirelessly with that panel. So let's say I've got an existing thermostat on the main floor, wires there, good to go. I put that into the zone 1, and then I would add this for zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. So we can mix and match with hardwired thermostats, or we can go totally wireless, or whatever you want to do. But here is the question you got to ask contractors. And this actually goes right back to Wi-Fi versus wireless conversation, even on a basic thermostat. Wi-Fi is not wireless, okay? There is a huge difference. Wi-Fi is so I can access the thermostat remotely through my app, and I can see what's going on, I can get alerts, I can do whatever I want to do. Wireless is talking either to the furnace, to the thermostat, or furnace and zone panel and thermostat, and I'm not using wires. It's a huge difference, and contractors will be confused as hell if you sell them something that's wireless and they actually want a Wi-Fi. So you gotta be on the right page.
It's
when they
pretty
call.
important, like from the get-go. Do you want wireless? Do you want Wi-Fi? Or do you
Or
want
both. Or do you want both?
It's a very important distinction.
It is, and before I was here, I was on the counter for 15 years, I was TM for 20 years, so I can tell you, this is more complicated for contractors than you would think. And it really shouldn't be, but it is.
No, it totally is, yes.
What's that? You get that call all the time, I bet.
So you asked them the question, wireless or Wi-Fi, they don't understand what you're
Well,
asking.
now you understand. The easiest way is, do you want access and do you have enough
Yeah.
wires through the wall? And this is what you have to ask them as a counter person or HVAC support guy or whatever your titles are. Do you need to talk to a thermostat that doesn't have enough wire through the wall? Or do you need to be able to access that and you have enough wire through the wall, or both? And when they give you the right answer, you have the right solution. And I can tell you, at least once a week, I get a call from a contractor that bought something from a distributor and it wasn't the right thing because the guys didn't ask the right question or the guy didn't know the right answer. I don't place the blame always on you guys, so just be aware. And then there's a lot to it, but if you are using, up until now, most of our products were wireless only, and then you had to use an internet gateway to access that system. But we're going away from that quite a bit, so I'm not really gonna go into that super heavy, because this product right here, it just takes our wireless product, talks wirelessly to the wireless product. This gets plugged into the homeowner's router, and then they have access from our app. That technology virtually is gonna be gone, I would say, within 2 years. And then we'll go to the T10 Plus like we talked about, or we can at a different day. The other thing we need to do is we need to install some sensors when you're using zoning. Because as I close dampers and open dampers, we all know that your heat exchangers in your furnace can only take so much heat. Or if you have an air conditioner, if you don't have the right airflow across that air conditioner, you're gonna freeze up that coil. So we put sensors in our kits, and the contractor, all he needs to do is read the directions, which I know sometimes that's a challenge. And they have to put the sensors in the right space. The other reason we do it is if we lose communication of some sort, and let's say maybe I've lost a mouse chewed off the wires, or I did some wireless technology and I lost the signal to the sensors. At least if I have some sensors out in the space, I'm going to default to different temperatures. So in this example, it doesn't show me, but if I lose communication, I basically default to, I believe, 60 degrees for heat. So I don't go at least below 60. And on air conditioning, I believe it's 75 or 80. So I'm not making, at least that house isn't making mold and just nastiness. So encourage the guys to read the directions and use the sensors is what I'm telling you. I know it won't happen, but we're all helpful or hopeful. This is just our add a wire, or add a panel. You're rarely gonna run into that. If you do, everyone has my card or know how to get a hold of me, call me and we'll work through it. The reason I'm kind of jumping through this, here we go. So we make round dampers, because some guys like to use the rounds, so I got a square duct in my basement. and they don't wanna make the square duct times 2, so what they'll do is they'll make a square and you got the 6-inch runs. Some guys will put the damper in the 6-inch run instead of the square. It's way more expensive that way, because you're looking at probably 120, 130 bucks times every 6-inch run versus 130 or 140 bucks, maybe 200 times only 2 or 3. So if guys are doing round, there's a reason why, but don't discourage them. Let them do what they want. But I make round, I make square, and then I make the retrofit. So what this retrofit is, it's just a gasketed piece of metal, and you slide that into the existing, you cut a hole, you slide it in, you zip screw it, you're done. And these are commercial and you won't run into these. And then the bypass is, again, if I've got too many, if I've got one smaller area, master bedroom generally, I need to put that air somewhere. So the air is gonna go back into the system, and I think that might be the next slide up. Or you can dump it into a non-critical area. Here we go. So the big key with a bypass, so let's say I've got one zone out here and it's the master bedroom and I've got too much air. This device is called the bypass. So your air is coming, it's starting to kind of build up. It's gonna bypass and dump it back in. So I'm constantly bypassing some of that air. The key is you have to be 6 inches or 6 feet from the blower. This needs to be. So my blower's here, oh, somewhere down here. If you measure to that bypass, if it's not 6 feet away, it's not gonna work. And they just wasted all kinds of labor and time, and they didn't give the homeowner a damn thing. So the rest of this you can almost ignore, but you have to be 6 feet down from that. And that, most heating guys should know that, but just be aware.
Why do you need a bypass again?
The bypass is, again, let's say I've got 3 zones, and I've got a 2000 CFM system, but I have a master bedroom that can only take 400 CFM, and the other 2 zones are closed. I have to get rid of that air somewhere. Otherwise, the motor's gonna amp up, and I've even seen it where the motor blower wheel's been blown apart because there's so much static and air in that system. So it's probably, I hate to say it, because it hurts the system efficiency when you bypass. But most guys don't understand duct design, so selling them that for 150 bucks and not having to go out on a problem job and bitching about noise, this probably offsets the system derating. Because your air conditioner that you're selling the guy for 18 SEER and the furnace that's 96%, when you're bypassing air, they're not really getting that efficiency out of their equipment anymore. But that's another conversation. All the bypass is, for common knowledge, is a Band-Aid for a bad duct design, but it's gonna save you guys from going out and having a pissed off customer for 150 bucks. Bottom line.
They are gonna have their system efficiency if we're not using a bypass, are they not?
If they size everything right and it's still there and it never opens, absolutely.
But I mean, we're gonna use the bypass when we're just trying to heat that master bedroom. But if we're heating our first floor, first zone, we're not using the bypass at all, they're gonna get their system efficiency,
Yep,
correct?
you're spot on. You're
And
spot on.
then, is that bypass opening based on pressures or based on what zones?
Great
we're-
question. I skipped over it. So actually, yeah, it's on pressure of the system. And so this is not electronic. This, even though it's round, and there's a flapper in here or a damper, this device is just a spring inside a fancy looking cabinet. And that spring is basically holding that damper closed. And if that air has to bypass, that spring lets this open and I dump that back into the system. So that is the difference between ours and other brands. And Paul kind of asked me to keep it somewhat simplified, but these normally will come out of the factory set correctly, because we're at a 1/2 inch of static and I'm not a duct designer, but 1/2 inch is what most heating guys try to size their ductwork and get it correct. But if they need to, they come in, they open all the dampers, they end up shutting the two biggest ones, so I'm trying to just feed the smallest one. If this damper doesn't open, all they do is crank that until it does, and they shut it and they're done. Takes about 2 minutes to set ours. Other brands are just really, really difficult. Some are even electronic, and really the price goes way up. And then it isn't really going off pressure, it's going off electronics, and then you're bypassing no matter what. So, explain. Here's kind of like what we just talked about, but it's constant pressure.
Talk about the weight, like
Yep.
old style.
Yep,
Yeah.
so, years ago, and I don't even know how long, it isn't like last year. I think we went to this thing about 10 years ago. Before that, we had a metal arm with a weight on it, and then we had the damper inside. So it looks like this, but it had this weight on it. And a contractor would go in and they would have to do the same thing. They'd get just the smallest zone calling, the other two bigger zones or one bigger zone not calling. And they'd have to slide this weight up and down until it opens and closes. Sounds pretty easy to do, right? But about 85% of them out there, they didn't have a fucking clue up.
That's right. That's right. That's fine. That's fine.
So they didn't have a clue how to set that. So, you know what normally happens then? It doesn't get set at all. So they don't even try. And then that never worked. And then it was just a worthless $80 device.
The bottom line is you'll hear a lot of guys say, "Oh, I want a weighted damper." You don't need
Okay.
that. That's
You've gotten,
I used to.
Yeah.
You get the calls. I want the weighted one. No, you don't need the weighted one
the
because
weighted
it doesn't.
one, and I can tell you, it took about 20 minutes to set this one up. Takes about 2 minutes to set that one up. And way easier. All you do is read 3 instructions, and at the end of the 3, and about 2 minutes later, you're set.
Prices relative.
Prices,
But we didn't offer a weighted one from anyway, do we?
I don't think anyone has a
We
weighted
used
one.
to have a White Rogers one or
Yeah,
Emerson
we're
one years
currently
ago.
stocking it all.
A lot of guys will try to do fresh air this way too. It isn't the right way to do fresh air. So, meaning fresh air is, you know, you guys know what a scuttle is, or what do you guys call a scuttle nowadays? I know scuttles, but just by code, every house is so tight now that you need some fresh air coming into your HVAC system, right? So you can either do a and I'm getting into a different presentation.
Sure.
But you can either do it mechanically, or you can do it with this would be, let's say, the outside of the house and the sill plate, and this is outdoor air. This is going to my heating system. In the past, if that heating system started, this weight would go up and I'd bring in fresh air, right? Because if I don't bring in fresh air, my house goes into a negative, and then we got a real problem, right?
So for fresh air, we use Famco and we use Berlin, so the BD6 and the BD8, the one with the damper, and then they have the little flapper you put outside.
Yeah, we just don't have the flapper, so this would be your Brown without the flapper. We have a motorized one, so, but same principle. But nowadays, you got a motor instead of a weight, and they work way, way better. Just be aware of that. And they're tied to your blower, so it, you know, works really simple. This is in the selection guide. So we make different size bypass dampers, and this is pretty easy to do. So I got a 2000 CFM system. My smallest zone is 600. So when I do 600 in the smallest zone, I got to dump 1400 CFM somewhere. So I go up to the selection guide. I got 1400 CFM. I got a 12-inch. That right there is in your book, so you don't have to dig that anywhere. But that's how you size these. Most guys that do zoning will know, but in case you need to know, it's in the book. It's in the middle page on the very top, and it has that math for you. These are out of sequence, but basically this is what I was telling you. The contractor just gets everything set up, they spin it, and it goes into the right mode. So questions on that? Now we're gonna, if you want, I don't know how much time Paul set aside, until 2 o'clock, so I got you about another half hour. This is, any questions on zoning? Otherwise, I'm gonna go a little bit more into the wireless versus Wi-Fi. So, again, RedLink is wireless, no wires in a house, that's what you need. Homeowner nowadays, they want to be able to control, they want to be able to be notified if their home goes below what their temperature set point is. That's Wi-Fi. So my T6s, my T10s, your EcoBees, whatever you're selling, that's Wi-Fi. RedLink is Honeywell/Resideo only. Z-Wave you're never going to run into unless you're doing plans. Multifamily uses Z-Wave quite a bit because it communicates with multiple thermostats a little bit better than Wi-Fi. In the future, I think you'll see Z-Wave more and more in our industry. But basically, RedLink, again, you're just talking to our products wirelessly. The big difference between our RedLink and a lot of other manufacturers that are trying to do wireless, we have about I've been told a 1/4 mile, but I've never tested that. But between the thermostat and the wireless adapter, I can assure you it's at least 300 feet. I've done buildings that are way, way, way bigger than that. The other thing is RedLink will go through concrete, it'll go through metal roofs, it'll virtually go through any building material you can find. I have sold RedLink since the day it was made, which was almost 20 years ago. I've ran into 2 jobs in 20 years that I couldn't penetrate, one thing or another. One was a really super old house that was plaster with the wire mesh behind the plaster. Couldn't penetrate that wire mesh. The other job was a mechanical machine shop, and they had about 1 million different lathes and everything in this, and it had so much voltages flying around in the building itself, I couldn't quite penetrate that. But 2 in 20 years is a pretty good track record. Wi-Fi, it's just being able to see different product or what's happening with your system. I think we all understand Wi-Fi. The one thing I don't understand is people don't realize that our Wi-Fi thermostats can notify you that there's a problem, which I think is kind of funny because I was at a party over Christmas and the guy, he hooked up one of our thermostats and he's like, why doesn't this thing tell me if the shit goes down? I gotta look at my thermostat app like 10 times a day. I'm like, you just set the setting that what you want and it'll notify you at that temperature. Oh, I didn't realize that. So be aware, you can do that. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Z-Wave, again, we use it in the security side of things and we use it in multifamily. You won't have that on the shelf, but if you ever had a Z-Wave on your shelf, you gotta make sure you're selling a Z-Wave or a Wi-Fi T6 because you wouldn't know the difference physically. So just be aware, but you won't see Z-Wave used in the residential market very often. I think we all know what Wi-Fi is. RedLink, I think we've pretty much beat to hell. Is there any questions on either one of those? Oh, here's so a while back we were talking about old homes all have 4 wires, right? A lot of them. And I need a common, so I need a 5th for Wi-Fi. You guys have these on the shelf, I guarantee it. And by the way, it works for other brands, but this is your 4 wires coming from an existing thermostat. You put this down in the furnace cabinet, so you take the existing wire, take it off the furnace board, and you wire it into here, and you match the thermostat wires, which you got a C, you got an R, you got a W, and a G. Rewire it, and you're going to go to K. So you're going to go C, K, H, and Y. That's what these terminals are, and you match it on the thermostat, and then you basically wire it to the furnace board. And all I'm doing is stealing power through a couple of wires to give that common power to a thermostat. This The vise probably costs $30. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's called an Attaware, it's common a C wire adapter or whatever. It works with every single brand Wi-Fi we make. So there's not separate parts for separate thermostats. There's one, well, there's really two. I don't know if you guys sell that one, or we make one that looks a little bit more like a contractor, not so much a retail one. The only difference is one's a little bit more money and a little easier to wire. But if guys are doing Wi-Fi, they should have that on their truck, period. For $30, they can't pull a wire. For $30, they can't, you know, there's nothing they can do for $30. So get it, make sure they use it. It's amazing. I do a lot of distributor shows for contractors. There's still a million contractors that don't know that's out there. It's amazing. And we've had that out forever. When you're doing Wi-Fi, or I'm sorry, wireless, we call this an equipment module. Matter of fact, I got one right here too. So this is the equipment module. This mounts down by the furnace and air conditioner in the equipment room, right? Then I can go totally wireless to the thermostat, or I got RNC. So right now I got RNC hooked to this. I got RNC hooked to the thermostat. Everything else is done wirelessly. And I have 300-foot range on that. You're not gonna run into that residentially, but you might. And then I can do multi-stages of heat. So I've got 3 heat, 2 cool, 4 heat, 2 cool. I can put 3 pieces of indoor air quality into this board. So let's say I had a homeowner that wanted a dehumidifier in the summer, humidifier in the winter, and air exchanger in year round. But I only want to control it from one product. How in the hell are you going to pull 15 wires through the wall? You're not. So what we've developed is the T10 Plus. So I got the T10 up in the house, in the hallway. I've got this board down in the basement. I wire everything to that. Everything else is done wirelessly. So that's where we're headed. T10 Plus info is there. If it's an older version, it looks the same, it's just a different part number. So make sure you don't kind of make them, a T10 won't talk to old equipment. So make sure when you're talking T10, you use that brochure and the stuff on there. Everything else is from the past. Eventually it'll be gone. So questions? I know I went through everything pretty fast, but we can do different modules at different times if we have to.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
If you guys need literature, I've heard it loud and clear, you want the thermostat brochure for contractors. What else do you need? Anything? You want some of the zoning, or you just don't get that much zoning through the counter?
I think it would be a good idea to have some of the zoning ones.
Okay.
Yeah, at the counters, for sure.
Yep, I'll get you that. T3, remember, super price competitive. Some guys just won't use
Do
Honeywell.
we have any T3s here?
I think I've seen them on your shelf. I'd have to look. But Lutz was saying, you know, hey, you gotta let the guys at the counter know, because there's a million guys that will just come in and say, I want the cheapest thermostat. Right now, virtually that is the cheapest thermostat. It's a non-programmable, single heat, single cool. About 80% of the systems out there have this type of thermostat on there. It's larger screen, way easy to use. The other thing we took a beating on in the past is we'd have some older thermostats, and the holes wouldn't match up. So if you use some of like a T1 or T4 or T6, it wasn't wide enough to cover up the whole bolt holes. So we made a wider base and a wider thermostat. The other thing some of our competitors will do is say it's hard to change the batteries. Not too sure how hard that is. And when you're done putting the batteries in, you put it back on, and it's configured, and everything was held in there, and you're good to go. So it's not that hard. If you need a real cheap thermostat, you look at this. It's called the E1. Don't sell it, because those are cheaper. I hate this thermostat, but for a while this was priced a little better. But the T3 is the way to go. Other questions? Any Honeywell problems you ran into? Any, I think the next class that I'd like to do for you guys is how to find all the reference material and that type of thing. I'll probably just come down, throw my Wi-Fi on, bring up Windows, and we'll go through all that so you know where to find parts and things that people internally really need to know. That one's super easy and we'll just rip through it. There's 2 sites that we use and it's super easy. That's what I got. I appreciate your guys' business and your time, so.
Thank you very much.
Everyone has my card. You can call me if you need anything. Have a good day.
Appreciate it.